And who can forget the winter storm of 2021? Rain fell on Valentine's Day, turned to ice, and that cycle repeated for several days. Millions of Texans lost power, and at least 246 people died in that disaster. So right now, we want to take a few minutes to compare these weather events and compare the two main things. First, looking closely at the differences in the forecast, and second, why state leaders are confident this year they can keep the lights on in our homes. Meteorologist Shane Hinton is going to help us out a little bit. And Shane, last year we saw some snow. So will we see any snow in this event?
I think there is the possibility for some of us to see some snow flurries in this event, but it's not going to be a widespread snow like we saw last year. In fact, if you take a look at the satellite radar, some areas in northern Texas and up there towards the Panhandle currently experiencing some snow flurries. But the rest of us, for the most part, we are expecting a wintry mix of freezing rain and sleet. Some areas of the northern hill country could see some snow flurries, but this is mainly going to be an ice event for us, Jenny.
All right, Shane. So last year's storm seemed to last about a week or so. What's the time frame looking like for this year's winter storm?
Sure thing. So let's talk about when conditions move in and when they're going to move out. Okay. As you mentioned earlier, last time there were multiple rounds of wintry precipitation. We're tracking one wave here. Let's start with the rain that we could see developing earlier before the front, let's say that. And then as we track that colder air pushing in, we start to see that wintry mix. It kind of transitions in the hill country between midnight and 3 a.m., I-35 corridor between 5 and 7, and then for our southern counties a little bit later, 8 to 11 o'clock Thursday morning. As we make our way into the back half of your Thursday, notice this precipitation is moving out of here. The cold air will last for a little bit, but we're not tracking another round of wintry precipitation. So that is a very stark contrast between last year and this year.
Yeah, speaking of cold, we all remember how cold it was last year. So what kind of differences will we see in temperatures for this event?
So temperatures, they're going to be cold. We're going to be pretty blunt with you on that one. But last year, we saw temperatures that were well below freezing for a very extended period of time. I want to show you, just to give you a reminder of the winter storm warning that we were tracking for today and for what we're tracking later tonight into tomorrow, I should say. Now let's take a picture at what we were compared at last year. So I went back on my Facebook and I looked at snapshots of our winter storm warnings for last year. On February 12th, I posted this winter storm warning that incorporates all the KVUE viewing area and then down to the south. And then we had that next wave, as we were talking about. And on February 17th, we had additional warnings and advisories mentioned. So that was a second round of storms. That meant even cooler weather continuing. As we take a look at the 7-day forecast, this was from last year, right around Valentine's Day. In fact, this was from our show on February 13th. Notice that temperatures were staying below freezing for Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and just getting above warming forecasted for Wednesday afternoon. In this specific circumstance, our 7-day forecast calls for temperatures to be above freezing on Friday afternoon with an afternoon warming trend throughout the rest of the weekend. It's still worth noting, those overnight lows, yes, they're cold. Widespread hard freezes are expected, but we do have some hope in the forecast whenever we look at those afternoon highs.
Okay, so we know what it's going to be like for us here in Central Texas. What's the full scope of the storm look like for everyone in Texas, our friends and family in Dallas and Houston and San Antonio, elsewhere?
So as of the last check, Houston, believe it or not, doesn't really have any advisories, I don't believe, that have been issued for them. So that's some great news. As you make your way to the north, we are tracking that winter storm warning that extends all the way north. Let me kind of go back to show you what we're working. You can see it extends north towards northern Texas. So they too are dealing with the winter storm. They have a higher potential for some flurries and additional ice accumulation. I think their totals are a bit higher than ours, but right now we kind of get a mix of the two. Maybe a few snow flurries, but mostly ice. But this will be a storm that people should be taking seriously, but nowhere near the size and scale of what we were tracking a year ago.
All right, Shane, some good perspective. Thank you so much. Now, let's talk about the power grid. By now, many of us know the Electric Reliability Council of Texas, or ERCOT, manages the flow of electricity to millions of our homes. Governor Greg Abbott is confident with the leaders of State Power Grid. Here is what he had to say yesterday about making sure there is enough energy stored for this weather event.
The prognostication is that ERCOT will have an excess of 15,000 megawatts of power available even at the time of highest demand. So ERCOT is well prepared for conditions as they currently stand, but remains flexible in order to be able to be responsive to power demand needs.
Now, according to ERCOT, 1 megawatt of electricity can power about 200 Texas homes. So that 15,000 megawatts of storage could theoretically keep the lights on for about 3 million homes. But even though leaders are confident in the stability of that power grid, they really can't guarantee anything.
No one can guarantee that there won't be a, quote, load shed event. And what we're prepared to achieve is that the power is going to stay on across the entire state.
But ERCOT may have learned from their mistakes. They were warned to weatherize power facilities after that storm in 2011. This time, ERCOT and the Public Utilities Commission made sure power facilities got the job done, because otherwise they were going to be fined up to $1 million a day per violation. Now, power providers were instructed to fix any issues to facilities from last year's storm. Some providers insulated parts of the plant to make sure nothing froze. In a finalized report from ERCOT, leaders say out of the 324 electric generation units and transmission facilities all across the state, only 3 did not fully pass inspection for new winterization regulations. And here is another indicator that ERCOT is confident the lights will stay on this time around. These are the tweets that went out early February 15th last year, leading up to the rolling power outages announcements. ERCOT also asked us to start conserving energy throughout the day on Valentine's Day. Looking at Twitter feed today, ERCOT has not alerted customers to conserve energy ahead of today's wintry mix, possibly indicating this time around the power grid may be more stable.